Hello everyone, this is Kathleen and I am here to do a little video about altering trash and making ephemera elements for this particular project is the Recycled Junky Journal. But you can do this kind of thing in any journal really. But I wanted to show you some of the trash that I use as ephemera and to alter into ephemera, like journaling cards and tags and papers, journaling papers, things that I would tuck into a pocket. So you remember we made these out of trash a couple of times ago in a video that is in this series, this trashy series, and these were cards that came in the mail, just junk mail type cards that I altered, and I'm going to put those aside and do that kind of thing again. I wanted to tell you that honestly there are two things that I find the most helpful when I'm altering like junk mail type flyers, and that is sandpaper and distress ink, and you'll see why. Okay, so when we talk about sanding, like this was just it was a junk mail postcard. Yeah, it's a high-level bridge in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And so what I did was with the sandpaper, I sanded all of the writing, and it makes just a really nice surface for writing. It takes the other print off and leaves, this white. And so I really liked the graphic part of that. I think it just matches this journal really well. And so this piece of junk mail is going to go into this journal. But that's, a little plain. So what I do after I sand is then I just take the distress ink and I smush some on the glass and spray it with water, and then I just kind of smear it like that to get the square shape out, and then I just smush the card on like that, right? And now the curious thing about using the sanding is that it creates a surface that is much more absorbent. So the ink is going to absorb right away rather than, smushing out and being watery. I could take the spray bottle and wet this heavily so that it would smear more, but it will, because I have sanded the sizing off of the paper and left the raw fiber, it just absorbs really fast, and that would tend to make the card soggy even. So I'm just going to let it be like this. Then I can take the other distress and just kind of do the edges. And now you just really don't even notice the little leftover writing underneath it at all. It just kind of disappears. And so now this can be journaled easily in the book. Okay, so there's one piece done. We'll put that over there. Okay, so that's what I have done with the rest of these junk mail flyers. You can see that this had printing on it before, and I just have sanded that down and then smushed it with different layers of ink. This one was a prize in the mail because it came with nothing on the back. It was, actually it didn't come in the mail. It was a flyer for an event at church. And so it had the printing for the event on this side, but this side was blank, which is really nice. That's what I like to see. So I have done that technique, sanded the printing off and smushed it with the paint and dried it. And so now I could, if I wanted, I could stamp it or stencil further or do a number of things. But what I'm going to do is just take one of these illustrations from the book of knowledge that I've been using, and I'm just going to glue that onto the card. Right about there. And then all I'm going to do is just take a little piece of washi tape. I apologize for the condition of my hands. I have been working and, you know, my hands just get kind of gross. So I will put some glue on this and I'm just going to put this like part way in, just a little bit of further embellishment for that card. There's my scissors. Okay, so then that one is done, and you know, you can do as much or as little as you want, but that just kind of alters that piece of trash into something that is useful to me. I think I will probably stick, when I can find one, I will stick a little word or something along there just to finish that one off. Okay, so why do I sand? Why do I like the sanding versus just, you know, paste paper over the top? And the reason is because if you start with a card, then you just add paper and paper and paper, and I really, after a while, it just adds a lot of bulk into the journal, and it makes it so that the card is almost too stiff to use, in my opinion. I write on these kinds of things myself as I journal, and I don't like tags that are really thick and really stiff. It doesn't feel comfortable writing on them. So that's why I like to sand. And then I like the distress because it's easy to just then cover what remains. For example, this is a clothing tag off of a turtleneck, and I want to cover it. It had printing on both sides, so on the back I sanded that to remove the printing, and then I sprayed it. I didn't smush this one. I just sprayed it with this little distress spray stain, and then that adds another layer. The other printing just kind of sinks into the background, and I don't notice it. So this is ready for a little bit of journaling on the back. And then I'm just going to now layer on the front of this. I'm going to put this little piece of antique ledger that's in my scraps, and so I'm going to just glue that along the side there. And then in my last video, or a couple videos ago, I cut this out thinking I would use it in a collage, and then I didn't. So it's just been sitting here on my desk, and now I'm going to use that along here and make another layer. And that's going to cover up the writing on that tag. Okay. going to hang that off the side like that and then trim it. There are times when you have to, you know, adjust for these things. Like this had that little tear off price on it. Some tags are like that. And so just to make sure that that doesn't rip in the future, then on this other side, I'm just going to take a little piece of washi tape and put over the top of that. I can find the end. There it is. Now I remember why I had that glue open. So we'll just put that over that bottom, and then we'll make sure that that little piece doesn't rip off. Okay, so then there's another tag done. We'll just put a string in that, and then that will be cute. So there's 3 down. And then I wanted to mention that I looked for just funny little pieces of real, you know, ephemera. That this is from Tinkertown Museum, which is this really fun, really strange museum that's about 20 miles from where we live. And it just has the funnest, I can't even explain it. It's just called Tinkertown. And they have these old-fashioned carnival kinds of things from the turn of the century that's been restored, and little puppet things that move, and you put the coin in. Anyway, this came out of one of the fortune teller machines, and I'm going to include that because it's just kind of fun. But it's easy enough to just, you know, put a little bit of ephemera. I could, if I wanted, I could make, you know, some more stamps on this side. What I mean by stamps is rubber stamps, some stamped images. Could go over the top of this, and maybe some different colors, and make it more interesting. But it's just this funny little prophecy on the back. Drop another coin in the slot and I will tell you more of your lucky numbers. Anyway, so I look for things like that kind of come into the house that I can use as ephemera in the journals. Okay, so another piece of trash that I use often is greeting cards. But you know, I don't want the thinking of you. So there's a couple different things we could do to get rid of that. We could paint on it, a number of things. But what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to take this label. This is from a set of labels that I got at the Dollar Tree, and they were glossy. So again, my trusty sandpaper, I sanded it to get rid of the gloss on the finish, and then I smushed it with, just like I did the other card, I smushed it into some Distress Oxide. And now I'm just going to take that label and I'm going to put it, I've got to stand on my tippy toes. I'm going to put it right up here and cover that, and then clip it off. Okay. Now you can kind of see that underneath there, and so I think that I'm going to leave it because you could put a date there. There's any number of things that you could do. and I want whoever journals in this book to be able to add what they want there. But I may do a little bit of stenciling, or I could even take a texture stamp like this and put another layer of something on there, and then that distracts your eye, see, from the printing that's underneath, right? So these texture stamps really can come in handy for things like covering up this printing, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's now ready, and it's also blank because the greeting card is generally not written on this side. So that becomes a nice surface now to journal. So there's that. So now look, we've got quite a little pile of cards going over here. Okay, so the other side though, the inside cover, I cut the bottom off. It had a little note at the top. I cut that off, but now we have this on this side. And I could take my sandpaper and sand that off, but you can also just cover it up, you know, with other paper. So I'm going to do that with this one. But before I do that, before I glue that on, I'm going to put a layer on the bottom. And I think I'm going to use this butterfly stamp. And I make one layer here. Well, I did the smushing, you know, with the distress, and then I'm going to put a butterfly image there. And one of the things that happens sometimes, especially if you do any sanding, is, like I say, it changes the surface of the paper, and so sometimes the stamps stamp a little differently. And so that's not really clear. Excuse my voice. But it'll be okay because it's kind of in the background anyway, because then we're going to put this other one on top. So let's get, and this book page just is the other side of this. I use these as my, you know, my glue page, and every now and then I can use it, always kind of being careful to make sure that there's not something weird in the text. Okay, so that covers that, and now we can, I'm going to use this other color of ink, and this should give me a better print because this is now a smooth book page. Now I will put this one on top here. Okay, so we've got that, and that one's done. Now again, I might, just to add another layer, I might take this spray, and I'm going to turn around and just give that another squirt on top. You could do, you know, some black paint or some white paint. White might be good, you know, to bring the background into the design. And I may do that later. I may go back and put a couple more splatters on that. So that one's done. Okay, so this was a calendar page, and I wanted to be able to use that as a journal paper. It's thin, which is what I like. It's not going to add any bulk, but what I did was I took a napkin, and did some napkin decoupage on here on this side. This is what the opposite side looked like. It was a picture of a couple of girls at the county fair, and so I did what I always do. I sanded it to get rid of the image, and then I've just done a little bit of napkin decoupage, some stamping on there, and then I put another butterfly on the back of here. And now I, or whoever, can journal on the back of this paper. So there's that. And then another thing that I really like to use as journaling papers is the initial or the blank pages, you know, that come out of the gutted books. Like this one is the dedication page, you know, to whomever here, and I don't want that, but I sure like this. I love the paper and I like the blank, so I'm going to use that and just cover that up again with some scraps. So we'll just take this and glue that down. I don't mind, you know, that some of the images can be, some of the graphics can be part of. I need to clean my fingers because they get dirty, and then I don't want to stain whatever project is coming after. So I'll just clean my fingers a little bit. That helped a little maybe. Okay, so back to this. So I don't mind having, you know, print in the background. I just don't want it to be something that, you know, somebody reads initially. So now I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to put this stamp on. And because this is all black, I think I want my black pad. I wonder where that is. Here it is. So we'll do the black. And so I'm just going to stamp on top of that, and then it'll just kind of be part of the design. There we go. Right. So now that's a design, and it looks deliberate, and then there's all that journaling space that can be used. Okay. Our pile is getting bigger. Let's a clean page. Oh, I was just going to show you these two. Here's two other ones that I did. Same kind of thing. I love using all that blank paper, and then I just try to make that part of the design. Here's another one. It was a little bit more of a stiffer page and said deeper things. I used this washi tape to cover up the name of the author, and then put another stamp on there. Okay, so then there's all of these other kinds of little things that I look for when I am at the thrift store. For instance, you know, I look for little half packs of index cards. I found this. It was tied together, you know, at my thrift store. And I don't remember what I paid for it, probably 25 cents. And it was just a few index cards, but I liked the color. And so I always look for things like that, usually in like the office/stationery section of the thrift store. So that can be used. And then they also have a number of these little pads of paper that, you know, come at the stationery section, and so I just look for those, and I can generally just do something like this. I just will when I'm doing my ink smushing, then I keep these handy, and instead of just wiping it up with the rag, then I'll take one of these little papers and smush it on there, do a little label stamp there like that, and then that's ready to go. So that's what I'll do with these couple sheets. You know, this was one of those memo notes that I see them quite often at my thrift store. I hope you do too. And then they have, I watch for these kinds of cards that are, this is such beautiful paper. Oh gosh, it's got this really lovely texture. I don't think it's going to come across on the camera, but this was some little note cards or something from Estancia United Methodist Church in Estancia, New Mexico. That's down the road a ways from me. But it ended up in the thrift store, and I was pretty happy. I can use that in a journal for journaling space. And then this was a little set of antique ledger. It's really nicely yellowed, and I found that in the thrift store. So I have, I don't know how many pages, maybe 10 or 12 papers of these. We'll put that in there. And then this was a pad of vintage typing paper. So it's very thin, and I just wanted to show you that sometimes when I have something that's plain like this, I can coffee dye it, or I can hand dye it with the distress. But sometimes I just fold it in such a way that it makes it kind of interesting as it sits in the pocket. So that's what I'm doing with this. It's just journaling paper, but I've just folded it so that it has those layers and will sit in an interesting way in a pocket. And then finally, there's just these little scraps of paper that these were from flyers, and there was some printing in kind of around the edges, and so I snag those, and I can kind of trim them down and use those. And I will do something like the distress ink or hand dye, or I can put a little punch in a corner. I can alter it in any number of ways, or just leave it blank, because now the paper is clean of the print. So there's a whole slew of ways that I alter junk for ephemera, and I'm thinking that this is probably the last video before I stuff all of this stuff in the journal, and then I'll do a flip through. So thanks for joining me for this, and I hope it was useful, and we'll see you next time. For this project will be the final flip through. Thanks for being with me.